During the Cold War, the United States government became convinced that the human mind was a battlefield. That conviction led the Central Intelligence Agency to authorize one of the most disturbing and wide-ranging secret programs in American history. The fear was genuine and, in the context of the time, not entirely irrational. American officials had watched Korean War prisoners appear on camera offering confessions that seemed impossible to reconcile with what their colleagues knew about them. Soviet interrogation techniques were rumored to have reached a level of sophistication that went far beyond physical coercion. There were deep anxieties inside Washington that communist governments had somehow unlocked a method of breaking human resistance that the West simply did not yet understand and could not counter. But these were not fringe figures working in basements. These were senior officials, credentialed chemists, respected psychiatrists, military researchers, all operating under the assumption that the Soviet Union might already be winning a war for the mind that America did not even fully know it was fighting. In 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles authorized a program that would eventually be known as MKULTRA, placing it under the direction of Sidney Gottlieb. The program's stated goal was to identify drugs and psychological techniques that could alter human behavior, extract information, break resistance, or induce states in which an individual might be directed or controlled. What it became over the following 2 decades was something far darker and far stranger than that original mandate suggested it would be. At its height, the program reportedly involved more than 80 institutions, including 44 colleges and universities, 15 pharmaceutical and research companies, 12 hospitals and clinics, at least 3 penal institutions. Gottlieb became particularly fixated on lysergic acid diethylamide, better known as LSD. The CIA scientists had first encountered through European pharmacological research. In the early 1950s, Gottlieb arranged for the CIA to purchase the world's entire available supply of LSD for approximately $240,000. The agency then distributed it across laboratories, hospitals, prisons, and safe houses for testing. What followed was a series of experiments conducted on CIA employees, military personnel, psychiatric patients, civilians, many of whom had no knowledge that they were being given any substance at all. One of the most grotesque sub-projects to emerge from MKUltra was what became known as Operation Midnight Climax, a series of CIA-linked operations conducted in safe houses in San Francisco and New York where men were allegedly lured by women working with the agency, dosed with LSD without their knowledge or consent, then observed by CIA officers watching from behind two-way mirrors. The most important single turning point in the entire history of MKUltra is the death of Frank Olson. In November 1953, Olson, a United States Army biochemist connected to biological weapons research at Fort Detrick, Maryland, attended a working retreat where Gottlieb spiked the drinks of several attendees with LSD without informing anyone present. Olson had a severe psychological reaction. Several days later, on November 28, 1953, he died after falling from the 13th floor of the Hotel Statler in New York City. The official ruling was suicide. His family has spent decades challenging that conclusion. His son Eric Olson has said publicly that he believes Frank Olson was murdered to prevent him from speaking about what he had witnessed and participated in during his government work. Donald Ewen Cameron was a Scottish-born psychiatrist who served as the first president of the World Psychiatric Association and ran the Allen Memorial Institute at McGill University in Montreal. Cameron received CIA funding channeled through front organizations to conduct experiments on patients who had come to him seeking treatment for anxiety, depression, and other conditions. His techniques included extended periods of drug-induced sleep lasting weeks at a time, massive doses of electroconvulsive therapy administered far beyond any accepted therapeutic levels, a process he called psychic driving, in which tape-recorded messages were played repeatedly to patients in a sedated state with the goal of erasing existing personality structures and implanting new ones. In 1973, as congressional scrutiny of the intelligence community began to intensify following Watergate, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered MKUltra files destroyed. The destruction was extensive. What survived did so almost by accident. A collection of roughly 20,000 documents had been stored in a financial records facility rather than with the main program files. They were therefore missed when the destruction order was carried out. A 1977 Freedom of Information Act request brought these documents to light, leading to Senate hearings that year in which the full shape of MKUltra began to emerge for the first time. The Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission had already established in the mid-1970s that the CIA and the Department of Defense had conducted experiments on human subjects. But it was the 1977 hearings that gave the public a clearer, if still fragmentary, picture of just how far the program had reached. One of the individuals who testified about his personal experience was James Stanley, a former Army sergeant who had been given LSD without his knowledge during a 1958 test, who spent years fighting the government in court for acknowledgement and compensation. When LSD and other methods failed to produce the controllable agents the program had hoped for, the interest mutated rather than disappeared. By the 1970s and into the 1980s, the Defense Intelligence Agency and later the CIA were funding research into remote viewing, the claimed ability to perceive distant locations or events through psychic perception alone. The Stargate program, as it eventually became known, ran from the early 1970s until it was declassified and terminated in 1995, after a CIA-commissioned review concluded that it had not produced intelligence of operational value. The case of James Whitey Bulger, the Boston organized crime figure, offers one of the most specific and personally documented accounts of what it felt like to be a subject in MKUltra's pharmaceutical experiments. Bulger was an inmate at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary in the late 1950s when he volunteered for what he was told was a government research program aimed at finding treatments for schizophrenia. In his own written account, Bulger described being administered LSD every day for more than a year. He wrote that during that period he believed he was losing his mind, that the experience was unlike anything he could have prepared for, that the gap between what he had been told he was participating in and what was actually being done to him represented, in his words, a greater crime than anything he himself had ever committed. Ancient astronaut theory, states and researchers into government secrecy have long pointed to MKUltra as evidence that official denials should never be accepted at face value. Actively concealed for decades, before the surviving evidence forced a partial public reckoning. The scandal did not produce clean accountability. Some survivors pursued legal remedies. Some families were told partial truths. Some officials testified that their memories were unclear. Many of the most important records are gone. What remains is a body of documentation that answers some questions, while making others permanently unanswerable. The question I keep returning to is this: if the files that survived the shredder contain what they contain, what did the files that did not survive contain?